The following broadcast is a presentation of Mount Zion Media Ministry.
I am glad that we don't have wings. I am glad that we don't have wings. One of the things that I love about the Bible is that it is truthful in a way that most of us don't want to be truthful. When you look on Facebook, when you read somebody's biography, 100% of the time, we're going to put a spin on it that makes us look our best. You won't find anybody putting a picture on Facebook of how they look when they first get up. They don't put pictures before the hairdresser. They put them after they've gotten all dolled up. They put that best meal that they cook. They don't show you that meal they throw on the table that's really not fit to eat. But we put little quotes and prayers like we saints or spiritual or something. And so that's just our human nature, to put the best forward, to make ourselves look good. When we give our testimony, sometimes it's test the lying, because in the testimony it's supposed to be about God, but before it's over, we end up making ourselves look good. It becomes I and not him. But the Bible is wonderful to me in that it's true, in that it shows the good and the bad, every side of a person's personality. Because I think it's important for us to not only see the faithfulness of the saints, but to see their flaws too. Because there's something for us to learn from their faithfulness and their flaws. So when I read Hebrews chapter 11, and we call it the Hall of Fame, about all of those wonderful folk, they just called the roll from Adam and Noah and Abraham and David and Isaiah. They did all those wonderful things by faith. Killed giants, made the Red Sea open, made it rain down fire from heaven. All of those powerful things. And I think, wow, I could never be like that. But then the same Bible comes along and shows us that every one of those folk also has some flaws. So we can be faithful and flawed at the same time. And this particular psalm in Psalm 55 shows David, if you will, at one of those frail and flawless and flaw-filled times of his life. David, in these two verses, he speaks out to himself in the middle of a complaint in this Psalm 55. And he expresses something that, if you and I were honest, we've thought about at least 10 times. And you know what it is? The desire to escape it all. There's something called escapism. And it's the desire of a person to escape trials, tribulations, difficult situations, and to find a place of rest, to find a place to hide from it all. Escapism. And then in our DNA, there's this instinct called fear or flight, or fight or flight. When we are faced with something fearful, our body, our mind naturally responds to do one or two things. Either we're going to stay and fight, or we're going to flight, which means we're going to run. And that flight part of us is there because there's this idea deep in us that if we can get away and avoid it, things will be better. And did you not know that the human mind has the capacity to do something that psychologists call detachment? That you and I can be in a particular situation. The reality is real, but in our mind we can detach from it. And it's like we are not there. People use it to deal with stress, to deal with difficult situations, and here it is. Sometimes people detach and can't go back. And so David here is expressing a desire for escapism. He wants to detach from the whole situation. Listen at it. Oh, that I had the wings of a dove, then I would fly away and be at rest. And that verse 7, and I would wander far off and remain in the wilderness. Here it is. I will go so far away from all of my troubles, in the wilderness somewhere where trouble cannot find me. Then I finally have some peace. That's David, and I submit to you at least 10 times, that's us. And maybe you in denial right now. It's not me. But let's look at verse 1 as we kind of break this song down a little bit, and then maybe you can see yourself in it. This particular psalm is a record of David where he gives to God a complaint about a particular situation that he's in. And a part of his complaint includes the desire to get away from it because it's overwhelming to him. And Dr. Jones, the record says that the instructions to the musician is to play this tune in a mournful way until you get to the end, and then it transitions to a sweet melody, because by the end, David works his way out of the desire to escape, and then he turns to the Lord and trusts in him. But let's start at verse 1. I just want to walk through it for a minute and see if we can listen at David and identify with him. He says to God, give ear to my prayer. In other words, God, I need you to listen to me. He said, oh God, and hide not thyself from my supplication. Have you ever been in a situation that was so tough and you were praying and it felt like God was not paying you any attention? That you just couldn't, for whatever reason, get the sense in your spirit that God was responding to you in a positive way? Because when he says, hear my prayer, it's not that God has a hearing problem. But it's, God, I need you to respond. It's like my brother. See, when my mama, we were growing up, and certain times of the day, my mama would go on the back porch and call us from the neighborhood. And she called our names a couple times, and we didn't respond. And then she particularly ought to get him, because I was a good child. And she would say, Roy, didn't you hear me? And she wasn't asking him about his auditory capacity. She was concerned about his response, because if he had heard her, he should have been home by now. And so when he says, hear my prayer, it's like, I've been praying and you hadn't responded. And so please don't turn a deaf ear to me. Verse 2, attend unto me, hear me. I mourn in my complaint and I make a noise. Can you picture David? He says, I'm making a noise. And what kind of noise do you think that is? I guarantee you he's not dancing and skipping like he did when he danced out of his clothes. But David is groaning. David is mourning. David is expressing the deepness of his emotion. David is hurt. And he's sorry. And I see him with tears in his eyes because he has a situation that he has no control over. And it's overwhelming to him. He says, because of the voice of my enemy. And when you read the latter half, part of what is happening is that the enemy of David, they're lying on him. They're scandalizing his name. David's name is being spread abroad in a negative way. People are saying things about him in the public that David cannot stop. And because of the negative reports that's going out about David, it is tearing him up. You missed it. They're talking about David on Facebook. They're posting stuff about David, and now the whole world sees it, and it can't be drawn back. Channel 10 News shows up to David's house. David, we want to know, is the report true? Did you do these things? And it is believed that David wrote this when Absalom and Ahithophel had ganged up on him. And so David literally ran and abandoned his role as king and left the palace. And so I can hear the news reporter, David, if it's not true, why did you run? David, why didn't you stay and fight? Why didn't you stay and defend yourself? Why did you leave the nation exposed? The voice. I made the papers. And for sure, in every hairdresser, in every barber shop, I'm sorry, hairdressers are old word, in every beauty salon, in every barber shop, at the wash house, in the break room, on the job, everywhere, they're just talking about me. The voice of my enemies, because of the oppression of the wicked, not just talk, but David says there are active acts of oppression or aggression toward me. I go to work and they just make it hell for me. I've been blackballed. I can't get anything in this town. At home, in the streets, wherever, David says, it's just all over me. For they cast iniquity upon me, and in wrath they hate me. You see how strong that language is? And then verse 4, and again, I love David because of his ability to express his emotions. Listen at him. My heart is so pained within me. I don't know about you, but for me, that heart trouble, and I'm not talking about that little red muscle, but that thing that we call the heart, the seat of our emotions and will, when your heart is tore up, it impacts everything else in your life. And David says, it's inside me. If it was something outside of me, I could move it. I could take it and throw it in the trash, but I can throw everything in the house in the trash, but it's still in me. And then he goes on and he says, and my heart is sore pain within me, and terrors of death are falling upon me. And this is David's simple way of saying, I am fearful of my own life. Fearfulness and trembling are come upon me. And here it is, horror hath overwhelmed me. Can I ask you if you see yourself ever being in a place where you felt like you were overwhelmed? It's one thing after another. Some of you felt like that last weekend. As I said last Sunday, because of what happened in January, you felt like, oh my God, here we go again. And you may be back in your house, but in your mind, you're still not settled. In your heart, you're still not back together. And so here we go again, overwhelmed. But not just, as I said last Sunday, not just those kind of storms, but there are things in life that even the potential of those, just the thought or the potential that those things will happen will overwhelm you. Can I tell you that one of, I've had some real tough days in my life, but one of the toughest days in my life was one day when I got a phone call, and lady said, Pastor Simmons, you see Maya? I've been trying to call her and couldn't get her. And so then I called her and I couldn't get her. And so for a span of about 3 hours, and you know, there's something happened in my heart. And then on another occasion, my son's wife called me and told me about a situation that was going on, and something happened. Because in both situations, they're somewhere else, and I'm here, and I couldn't get there to do anything. And in my situation, it was the unknown. In Derek's, I knew, but I couldn't do a thing about it. Then I've had some other stuff to happen. Death and hurt and pain. And just the feeling of being overwhelmed. And sometimes pastoring y'all is overwhelming. I'm sorry, it's that 10:15 crowd. So, and I'm just being transparent because I'm trying to get you to get there, because I can't help you until you get there. And when you read past verse 7 and you go down, part of what makes this happen, David said, it's bad enough, but it wouldn't be so bad except that the people who are causing this are my familiar friends. David says, it is people, as I remember, we went to worship together. We were comrades. It's family. It's folk that I've given my life to. It's folk that once gave me advice, and now they're advising my enemies. And y'all have to admit, now, it's one thing for somebody out yonder to stab you in the back. But when somebody eat at your table and get up and stab you in the back. So David says, that's where I am. And if you're there, let me just go ahead and close. So here it is. And so again, in all of that, David says, Lord, I wish that I had the wings of a dove. Then I would fly away. Listen, the writer of Isaiah chapter 40, he talked about the wings of eagles. David didn't say, I want the wings of eagles. See, the wings of eagles, David could fly through and above his trouble. But David didn't want to go through it. He didn't even want to have the energy to go above it. David just wanted to get away. Give me dove wings. They that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength, mount up with wings like eagles. David knew that, but David didn't want that. David says, let me get out of this. And so here it is. I'm so glad that the Lord didn't grant David's request and give him wings. I'm glad he didn't have wings, and I'm glad that we don't have wings. Because, just bear with me for a minute. If David had had wings, David would have missed the ministry of his trouble. And can I tell y'all that every situation we have brings us a ministry? And if you're honest right now, some of the best and most powerful lessons that you've learned didn't happen in those good times, but it happened in those bad times. You didn't learn the most about yourself when things were easy, but you learned the most about yourself when things were tough. So David, I'm glad that you didn't have wings, because David, if you had had wings and you could have flown away from your trouble, number one, David, you would have missed the ministry of affliction, of trouble and trials in terms of producing patience. And the Bible says in the book of James, count it all joy when you enter into divers temptation, because out of these temptations comes patience. And patience worketh perfection. And that word perfection means maturity. And so out of tribulation, when you're in partnership with God in that, and God is helping you in that, it helps to mature you. In other words, it helps you to grow and become stronger. I am not an expert weightlifter, but I do go in the gym. Haven't been in about 3 weeks, but I do go. And here is what I can tell you, the little bit I do know. In order for muscles to grow and get stronger, you got to stress them. If you go in the gym every day, get you a lightweight, and lift that little lightweight every day, you will not see any results. But when you go and you stress that muscle if you want to grow and get big. Like Marlon, see, I don't try to get big. I just want to be toned. But you have to get heavy weights and you lift them. And what happens is it tears your muscle. And then you rest it and you give it protein and other stuff to help it. And then it gets bigger and you go back in there the next time and you're stronger. And the more you stress it, the more you tear it in a very positive, controlled way, it grows and it gets strong. It matures you. And some of us got to understand, like David, that if you run away from everything, no growth will come. Could it be that the reason some of us are not maturing is that we've not yet learned how to let our troubles minister to us and develop patience, maturity, or perfection? And so, David, I'm glad you didn't have it, because you were able to grow and become a man that God could brag on you and say, he's a man after my own heart. Here is number two. I'm glad David didn't have wings, because David's troubles were times of preparation. David had some great victories, but those great victories came because he had troubles in the past, and the trouble in the past prepared him for future battles. Here is one example. David had a trial at home. David's daddy favored the other 7 boys over him. And so as a result of that, David's daddy gave him the nastiest job, that of keeping sheep. And when Samuel came to the house looking for Israel's next king, he didn't even think about David, because David was the overlooked child. And so there David is on the backside of the mountain keeping sheep. The brothers at the house, daddy not studying, brothers not studying. But while he was back there in that situation, God took him through some stuff. While he was back there keeping sheep, a little boy, and his job is to protect the sheep, a bear comes out. And now this young teenage boy got to deal with a bear. And somehow he got up the courage to fight and kill a bear. On another occasion, a lion comes out to attack the sheep. And then here he is again, this young boy faced with a lion. What does he do? He takes the challenge, fights the lion. Fast forward. His country is in a war against the Philistines. His daddy's sons are in the war. And daddy says, take them a lunch, go check on them. And when David gets there, all the army is in fear of the Philistine giant named Goliath. And David said, what are y'all afraid of? Him. He said, let me at him. I'll take him. They said, you just a boy. You can't do nothing with him. And David presses the case. And then the king says, what gives you the right to believe that you can kill a giant? He said, well, this is not the first giant I faced. He said, while I was keeping the sheep, a bear came out and I caught him and I slew him. While I was keeping the sheep, a lion came out. And what I did to the bear and the lion, I'm going to do it to this giant. See, because here is what I learned while I was on the backside of the mountain, that I don't win my battles in my own strength, but I'm going at this giant in the name of the God I serve, and in his name the giant gonna fall. But where did David learn that? On the backside of the mountain in his tribulation. And I'm telling you, there's some things that you won't learn about God until you face some lions and tigers and bears and some giants. And so you ought to praise God for them, because here it is. Here it is. Here it is. Anytime you're going through stuff now, it's a predictor that a battle is ahead. If you're dealing with lions now, there's a Goliath coming. If you're dealing with bears now, there's a Goliath coming. And going back to that maturity piece, and the lion makes you stronger to handle the bear. And the bear makes you stronger to handle Goliath. And then after Goliath, whatever comes, you get stronger and stronger. But that only happens if you don't have wings. Because if David had been able to fly away from the lion and the bear, he wouldn't have been ready for Goliath. Tell you something else. If David had had wings, do you know that you and I would be missing some of the most beautiful poetry and most encouraging words in Scripture? If David had had wings to fly away, we wouldn't be around talking about the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. You wouldn't hear us in the throes of death, talking about, yea, though I walk through the valley in the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of... David couldn't have written that had he not had some trouble. That psalm came out of trouble that David had to go through. Psalm 27, the Lord is my light and my salvation, of whom shall I fear? My enemies come upon me, hosts encamp against me, they stumble and fall. David could only write that because he didn't have wings. Fret not thyself because of evildoers, for they shall soon be cut down. David couldn't have written Psalm 37 unless he had gone through something. I've been young, now I'm old. I've never seen the righteous forsaken, nor their seed begging bread. That comes out of experience. And can I tell you, like David, that the beauty of those songs and what it literally is reflections of what he learned about himself and God while he was going through. And brothers and sisters, there's some stuff that you can't learn about yourself and God until you've been through something. Did you not know that if you just listen to some seasoned saints, you will hear them say stuff that you millennials might laugh at, and it sounds crazy, especially you who are real deep in the Bible. You just throw them off as old folk. And while it may not be what you think it is, what they are saying to us, when you listen to the language, it comes out of their experience. What are you talking about, Pastor? Well, I just told you about David's Psalms, right? And how David learned stuff. Well, we know, for example, in the Bible, we who will learn, his name is Jehovah Jireh, Jehovah Shalom, he's God of our peace, and Jehovah Tiskanu, and Jehovah Rapha, and that's the way we talk about God. But there's some seasoned saints, they don't even know anything about no Jehovah Rapha, Jehovah Tiskanu. They can't even say those words. But you ask them who he is. You hear him saying stuff like, he's a burden bearer. He's a heavy load sharer. Crazy midnight rider. My company keeper. Way out of no way. Bridge over troubled water. Lawyer in a courtroom. Doctor in a sick room. Friend for the friendless. You don't find these titles in Scripture, but they come out of people's experience. Listen at the songs of the seasoned saints, these spiritual songs. Everything moved by the power of God. Lord, build a fence all around me. It's all right. It's all right. As long as I know I got a seat in the kingdom. You can hear them here, but you cannot there.
Thanks for watching. Be blessed and continue walking in the light.